You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram.
How y'all guys? This is Joey from New World Cricket, and you are watching the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Joining me on today's cricket discussion is a person who has recently embarked on his cricketing journey, a newcomer to the game of cricket. He has taken it upon himself to create a YouTube channel called New World Cricket, which is dedicated to cricket and to gain an American's perspective on the game of cricket. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Joey from New World Cricket. Joey, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here to talk about New World Cricket, what you do there with your YouTube channel, but also talk about cricket in the States and your journey into the game. You've only just begun and you're wanting to learn more and be a part of the cricketing family, which is fantastic. And we're seeing more and more people from America, and I've interviewed some of them on the podcast who have taken an interest in cricket. So it'd be great to hear your story and to hear your perspective on the game in America and how it's going. And just to educate people, and that's what it's all about, learning about new things. And no doubt people will learn a bit more about US cricket today in our chat.
Awesome. I'm all for it.
Yes, but as you know, Joey, as I do with all my guests that I've interviewed on the podcast, I like to take them back to when they first got into cricket. Mm-hmm. And it's been very fascinating listening to people's memories and how they started to get into cricket. So, Joey, your introduction to cricket is very different to those who come from traditional cricket countries, being from America and not being accustomed to the game growing up. So, Joey, let's go back to the very beginning of your cricket journey. What were your earliest memories of cricket?
That's a great question. My earliest memory was when I was 11. And I was in the movie theater watching a movie called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That kind of sounds weird. Like, how does that relate to cricket? But there's a very small part of the movie where cricket is talked about. And so at the start of the movie, there's this guy, Casey Jones, and he's got all these, like, he's like a street fighter. He's got all these like weapons, like from sports. So he's fighting these bad guys. He takes out hockey sticks, and then he later takes out baseball bats, and he's fighting one of the turtles, the red turtle, Raphael. He's hitting him with baseball bats. And then eventually he takes out a cricket bat. And I was like, what is this, as a kid? And I remember that the red turtle says, cricket, nobody knows how to play cricket. You need to know what a crumpet is to play cricket. I was like, what is that? And then Casey Jones just like hits him, and he hits him into the trash can. He says, 6 runs. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but there is a sport that's kind of like baseball where you could score runs, and it has a bat. That's pretty cool. And that's where the coolness ended at my young age, because the couple other instances of cricket that I saw were negatively portrayed as like a boring sport like croquet. And that's really unfortunate, because I think Test cricket is awesome. I think it's really, really special. But the way it was portrayed here was, it's like very quiet. And it's like kind of like just very like posh and very upper class. So that was really unfortunate. And it wasn't until I think like 2018, 2019, where I got to know cricket again. First through rugby circles. And so, I also follow rugby. I really like rugby. So when you're in those circles, people mention other sports. Lots of Australians play rugby, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
They mention Australian rules football, mention rugby league, and mention cricket. So I was like, okay. And that was like more neutral, things that I've heard. And it wasn't until 2020 that I saw like my first IPL game. And I remember it was like during the pandemic. There were some pretty difficult times, and a lot of time to ponder things, and you're not going outside. I don't know how it was there, but here it was working from home and staying at home after you work from home all day. And so I had a lot of time to research things. I try to take advantage of it. So I got into like sports. I got heavily into Australian sports, like heavily, mildly obsessed with Australia. And just seeing like, whoa, the sporting culture there is so cool. You have two types of rugby. I didn't know that. And you have your own football game, and then there's cricket. And I didn't get too much into it. I remembered I worked at this school, and one of the physical education teachers, this is before the pandemic happened, actually, he mentioned, he was going to do a couple different types of games like handball, floorball, talk about rugby too. And he mentioned cricket, and he said, we'll have to do the short form of cricket. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, the original form of cricket takes like 5 days. And I was like, no, it doesn't. I was like, immediately, like those things that you hear is so preposterous. You're like, that's not true. But I looked it up and I kind of found more about it. And so I'm jumping back ahead. I watched my first IPL game, and that's when I learned like, okay, there's a really short form equal to like the length of baseball, maybe a little bit longer, called T20. And I saw the fireworks. I saw the uniforms. I saw the colors. I saw the stadiums, the fans, and I was like, what is this? It blew me away. And I was like, okay, I'm not leaving my room for a couple of days. I'm just watching cricket. Can't believe it. And then I saw the Big Bash League too. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing in so many other ways that IPL is not amazing. It's got its own thing. And I saw Moises Enriquez from the Sixers. And I was like, okay, that's my team. And I saw the Mumbai Indians, Kyron Pollard. And I saw Shikhar Dhawan. He like caught a ball with his bare hands. And then he does that. He like slaps his knee. I'm like, that's so cool. So like that was my team. And I was like waiting, like the whole match was waiting, like hoping he would catch a ball. I just felt so good. And, during the pandemic, it was just like you needed those moments of joy. Yeah. It really got me through, a difficult time. So I went on and off, and so I didn't really fully get into it until a little bit later. There's some things I was confused about, like why are they swinging and nothing happened? They missed, they whiffed, and like, is that strike one? And someone mentioned, knowledge of baseball can be really helpful, but it could also be a hindrance. And I think in a couple ways it was a hindrance because I had these preconceptions that didn't exist in cricket. Like, okay, how do you throw a ball? Like, what are balls and strikes? Like, how are they calling that? And it's like, that doesn't exist in cricket. So fast forward a little bit later with the start of Major League Cricket, I heard about it. I was excited about it. And I decided on a whim, I'm just going to talk about this. I previously had a rugby channel that, kind of like dormant at the time. Didn't get much interest. It was hard being an American doing that. I felt like people immediately heard my accent and they're like, why are you doing a history video on rugby, Yank? And so it's like, okay. And I just wanted to talk and have a community and something like that. And so when I did that video on cricket, I was just blown away of the community and asking questions, and people were interested in my opinion as a new fan to the sport. And so it was just something that I kept doing and having like a blast doing. And one thing about my personality that I really like is like just observing things and researching things and getting to know every little nook and cranny, every little detail. And the comments I was getting were like some of these really long comments. I'm like, oh, I love this. This is me. And so I've kept doing it. I've been having a lot of fun doing it. And so as the channel goes on and on, I obviously compared to the early days, I know way more about cricket. Like I studied it. I make sure I know all the rules. Now there's like little intricacies that I don't know, or, certain terms. So I feel like I'm on the next level. And then I'm a little bit of an authority to talk about it. But I just feel like the community, regardless, is really great. And I could give you an example. compared, to other communities. So when I was like into rugby, people would fight, like NRL is the best, National Rugby League from Australia, and they didn't like any other like competition. I remember I was playing rugby with somebody, and I was like, I like this English team, and he's like, oh, you like that team? They're horrible. And I'm just like, why would you do that? Rugby league is such a small sport. Like, why would you trash that? Like we should need to stick together.
Yeah.
But with cricket, when you mention something, like everybody's interested, everybody like supports it and wants to know everything about it. Everyone wants, ask me questions about Major League Cricket. Is it going to grow? Like, please, are you teaching your kids how to play cricket? We need more Americans. So I think the overall enthusiasm really helps when you're, doing things like this. And so they've made it really easier for me and a joy to be a part of. And so I'm really happy to be doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great hearing your introduction and into the game, and I couldn't agree more. The cricket community is always willing to help people who are newcomers to the game, and you'll get that from people in the cricket community, and they'll explain a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense to people when they're studying and learning about this game. Do most of your friends know what cricket is? Have you convinced them to watch cricket or love cricket, or they have absolutely no idea what you're talking about?
No idea. There's like a spectrum of like knowing nothing and being like ignorant and thinking like they call it British baseball, and I'm like, no. Or I saw a YouTube video where they called it Indian baseball. I'm like, oh my god, no. So yeah, I don't even bring it up because it's such a hard. I need to find a better way to explain it to people. Yeah. So sometimes I'll have it out at work and I'll have to like, what are you watching? Cricket. Like, what's that? And the easiest thing to say is like, it's a bat and ball game. It's not baseball, but it's a bat and ball game. And so you're just going to have to watch it. And so sometimes I watch it and, I haven't gotten very far yet. So I'd say with my channel, one thing I would hope to do is to get new fans into the game, explain it across communities. But right now it's just like getting my message across to people who already like cricket. And so I think that's like a big challenge going forward, is just how can you explain a game? It's a very complex game because it took me a pretty long time to fully get it. I had to stop, start and stop to really fully understand the game. It took me over like maybe a year to like feel really comfortable in my grasp of cricket, where I knew the rules. I felt comfortable with the score line, and I love the struggle. Like, it was great for me. Like, I enjoyed every second of it. But other people might not like feel that way. Like, you feel like, if your favorite sport is soccer, that's like diametrically opposite in terms of like statistics. Cricket is like full of numbers. Soccer is just like 0-0, the game ends. So I think that's like something to work for going forward, is explain it to my friends and getting more into the cricket community here in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. Because cricket is becoming more and more noticeable in America, and people want to be more curious about it and see what this sport is all about. You mentioned baseball and how that's helped you in some way, and it's been a bit of a hindrance learning about the game.
Yeah.
From your perspective, do you see a lot of similarities between the two sports?
Enough where it makes sense to compare the two. It helped me in a lot of ways. And so, you swing with a bat, you pitch or bowl. So you have that aspect. You have innings. You catch it for an out. Things like that. There's things that are very different too. Whereas in baseball, it's more like you can argue with the referee or the higher, not the referee. You can argue it. In cricket, there's more like respect built into the game. built-in like gentleman's game. And that's the part I'm really interested in too, because I think it's a really good sport for young people to learn these type of rules, learning respect in the game of cricket. So I'd say there are enough aspects of the game that it's similar, but it's also very different at the same time. It's really like cricket is complex. One thing I love about both baseball and cricket is, the numbers, the statistics, the fact that you could listen to a game and like fully understand it. Like you can't really do that with like hockey, ice hockey. Can't listen to it like on the radio. I feel like, when I was listening to those ODIs over the summer, I would like, listen to it and I could kind of understand what's going on. Like, okay, batting, he's throwing this pitch, and you can kind of glean that information. And so that's something I did growing up, is listening to baseball like on the radio, like all summer long. And so it's really cool to have another sport to do that comfortably. And so I really like that a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose it's one of those easier sports, cricket, to commentate without watching it on TV, on radio. And you can picture it straight away what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
So it's one of those sports that makes that easier.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of cricket itself, the formats, Test cricket, ODIs, and T20s. What do you like about each one of the formats that you've watched in your time of, following the game? Which one do you prefer the most, and what formats are interesting to you?
T10 is my favorite. No, I'm just joking. I have 3 kids, and it's like saying like, which is your favorite child? It's like, well, I love them all for different reasons. And if you asked me like last summer during the qualification for Cricket World Cup, I'd be like ODIs for sure, because I had such a blast watching ODIs. I was like, this is my format. I love this format. And I know people are like, it's dying and all that, but I had a blast watching the Cricket World Cup. I love the ODI format. It takes the whole day, but you really like, and people have said that it's long enough to where like, if you're not good enough in bowling, like it's going to be exposed, or if like you're not good enough in batting, like those issues are going to be totally exposed. But it doesn't take 5 days, so it can finish in a day. So I really love that about ODIs. Test cricket, I've watched. It's hard because there's really only 11 teams you could watch. I mean, I guess there's other types of first class cricket, but I haven't gotten into that. And so I think that's limited. Because I can't watch United States play, or I can't, I'm really into associate nations. Excuse me. So that kind of limits it. But I have seen, some of the Australia West Indies series, England and India, and so I follow it. I think it's great. And when you look at history, like that's the format that existed. So it's really important, and it's really cool to have such a long game like that, but it's going to take some time to really like get that hook into the Test cricket.
Yeah.
And then T20 obviously is unique in its own way and special in its own way. I love the domestic leagues. Major League Cricket is a T20 league. IPL, I couldn't be more excited for the start of IPL. Cricket World Cup, the T20 Cricket World Cup that I'll be going to New York to watch. And so T20 is special, it's just a faster version of it. And sometimes it feels like a little bit cheapened by the fast format. But I really love that format too. I think that's developing, and it's really solidified itself as a valid form of cricket. And I'm really happy for that, because now there's opportunities to play this game and get bigger crowds, and be what it may, it's the best format going forward into the future to bring more crowds to the game. Like that's got to be this way. So I'm just in awe of the different leagues, the different countries, and watching associate nations. I mean, T20 is really big there too. So Yeah, I love it. So it's hard to say which one, but every that's great.
It's fair enough. You either like all three formats, or you just like one or two or particulars. But you would have noticed, in your time of covering cricket the way you have for a short time, you would have noticed there's a lot of different opinions about T20s in particular, and saying that Test cricket is the best, which it is. It's one of my favorite formats as well. The history, the traditions, and all that stuff is wonderful, and it's in a bit of trouble at the moment with its uncertain future. At the moment, Test cricket. So you would have heard a lot of people commenting on your videos about that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So you can see where people lie and stand when it comes to the three formats. But from your perspective, do you think that's the unique part of cricket, is that you can have one game but turn it into three formats, whereas in baseball you can't really alter it that much?
I wonder if this is a product of the lack of clear professionalism, because like that's why you have two forms of rugby. You had one that needed to be professionalized and then one that was strictly amateur. And I know cricket was professional-ish, or I don't know to what extent, but perhaps it was like due to that, where, when baseball became popular in the United States, a lot of cricket teams converted to baseball because it was a clear model to, capitalize and make money off the sport. Whereas cricket, you could make money, but it also that's not the purpose of the game, to make money. It's a gentleman's sport. And I think it's really pure in that regard. And so now it's like going to T20, as you're having these issues that I think baseball immediately solved back when it first started. But I think that's what makes cricket really special. And so you have these different forms, and like you had the historical, you had this, I don't want to say ancient, but like this, this form of cricket that's like so traditional and steeped in tradition, and in a lot of ways the same, it's changed most likely, but still very pure to what the game was 100 years ago. And in baseball, you don't have that. Like the game's very different. And so you lose some of that tradition, I think, in baseball. And so I've grown up, reading histories about baseball. And I remember one of your interviews with Mike Howard said, cricket lends itself to literature, and baseball does too. And so I love that. And so the bad part about baseball being so commercialized is that you lose some of that history in the game, and you lose that connection with it. And I think with cricket, you have this updated form called T20, where you also have this form that's uniquely tied to tradition, Test cricket, and you could do both and be happy with both. And so that's something they have to sort out in the future, like how much time do you give to each one? But I love that these three forms exist. Sometimes you feel like an ODI, sometimes you feel like a T20, and it's really cool to have different formats. So I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with what you said there. Yeah, that's what cricket is about, really. It's different. It's different to other sports. It's got that different persona about it, which people gravitate towards, and commit themselves to life following this game. Many ups and downs, especially if your team's not doing too well, and then doing well. And even playing the game itself, it's a very hard mental game. And that's another question. You have tried a game of cricket? You've tried to bat, bowl, field, kept wicket?
Yeah. I've done some. I was playing rugby, and I was on an Australian rules football team, believe it or not, in the United States. And I had to stop. I had some health issues, so I had to stop that. Most recently, last summer, I was all set to go on a team, and just life happened. I had a son, and so I had to stop, in the summer with my plans and go into dad mode and with his new baby. And that's a very, very happy time. But you don't have time for cricket during that. So I think this coming summer is where I really get into it. I batted some. I played a little bit here and there. I have ball. I've thrown a bowl some. I'm more of a bowler than a batter. So when I play baseball as a pitcher, so I think that's where I would gravitate to. So I've been around it. I've seen it. I've played some of it. But I'm really going to get into it this summer. I'm going to be like cricket crazy with the World Cup, with Major League Cricket, and domestic minor league cricket, and then playing in your own leagues. And one thing I really like about cricket, and I live in Washington D.C. area, is there's a lot of teams like springing up like all over the place. Washington D.C. is very like everybody here is an immigrant. Even if you're from the United States, you're not from this area of Washington. You're from a different state. It's very transient, and so, but there's just so many different communities that create their own cricket team, and they're very welcoming. And so I feel like I have so many options. Whereas, when I played Australian rules football, for example, it was just like one place in downtown DC. There's so much traffic. Or when you play rugby, you have to travel like an hour away. So I think the ease of playing the game will also very much help. It's very there's a lot of teams throughout the area, so it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see those local communities and teams popping up everywhere in the States. So it's good to see that people are organizing some cricket and even some games in the park or something like that, which you can do with cricket. Yeah. You can take cricket everywhere. You can play it on the street, play it in the beach, the park, or the backyard. It's quite a game where you can move it around a bit. So good to hear that. Now, obviously, you've mentioned your YouTube channel, New World Cricket. And for those who may be new to your channel and may want to learn more about what you do there, just tell us a bit about the channel and what you do on there in terms of covering cricket.
Yeah, I mean, that's my way. That's my contribution. I'm never going to be like a cricket journalist or like really be as knowledgeable as someone, you have Peter De La Pin on your channel. I'm never going to be as knowledgeable as him or someone who grew up with the game. So my contribution is learning the game on YouTube with this community, and being, I'm more of a character rather than, being up straight up and saying, just the straight up facts about cricket. So I try to be, as entertaining as I can while covering cricket. I feel like I'm good at that. And then just tying it constantly as whenever I can to American mindsets, And so just basically just constantly making those connections, like, when you talk about IPL having a 2-month season, like, okay, why is that not going to fly with an American fan? Okay, well, our seasons are 6 months long. Okay. The international window, why would an American not care about that? Because we don't have that same importance on international forms of the game. So I try to give them that context, because I constantly get questions of, how can a cricket be popular in America? And there's just the sporting mindset in America is very different than the sporting mindset in India and Australia and other countries. And so I grew up in that culture. So that's the one thing I can contribute, is just explaining this American style of thinking and trying to fit it into cricket the best way I can. And try to do that. And so sometimes, it's like a work in progress. So it's been fun. And so I think people are really interested to see what an American thinks about cricket. Sometimes they call me like a Native American. It's just like, no, I'm not a Native American, but I think, some of the Indian fans, what they mean is just somebody who didn't grow up with the game, who's not from a community where cricket is popular. like learning about the game. And so I think that gives them hope that it can be popular in the United States. So just giving them that perspective and being as entertaining as possible while you're doing it is just basically what I can do, what I can offer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic to hear. And the community that you have built up have been very supportive and also providing some very knowledgeable information to you as well to help you learn more about the game as well. Tell us about the community that you have.
Well, I mean, I love this because I'm learning so much about like different communities who like cricket, like how their mindset to it. I have people from Nepal, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, obviously, people from South Africa, some from West Indies, like Jamaica, and I said Trinidad and Tobago. I pronounce it like Spanish, or like Trinidad and Tobago. I guess I'm learning how to pronounce some of these countries too. But yeah, just people from all over the world. A lot of friends from India too, and so they're the people who like drive me to keep doing this. And I remember the first comments I would get is like, "Keep going, you're doing great. If you keep doing this, it's gonna be good. We appreciate it." I'm so glad to see an American talking about cricket, and so I think they're just absolutely fantastic. It makes it a lot easier because they give you suggestions on what they want. They're like, "I want a video on this," so it's like, okay, I'll do it. I want to see more about American Premier League cricket, or like what happened here. So again, it's that difference between other sports and cricket where they're like overly interested in like every little detail. So it makes it like, I don't want to say easier, but it makes it like, less cumbersome to come up with ideas, and it really inspires you to keep going when you have people like rooting for you. And you have people who disagree with you too. But I like the disagreements. I like the arguing. I think it's mostly respectful, and just learning about like Indian culture, different cultures, and how they incorporate the sport in their culture. It's very interesting. So I've been learning a little Hindi myself, and just been just trying to understand their mindset, because there's a lot of differences between American sporting culture and sporting culture outside of that. So just trying to bridging those two together has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely, and good to hear that as well, and good to hear that support from the community that you have on your channel, which is fantastic. And it was good to hear your journey into cricket and how you got started. And I guess everyone has a different journey into the game, how they got into it, how they fell in love with it. So it was great to hear about your journey and your enthusiasm for cricket, and you wanting to learn more and be a part of the cricketing family and community, which is fantastic. It's wonderful to hear that, Joey, and thank you for sharing that with us. Wonderful to hear about your thoughts on cricket and your journey and getting into it, and wanting to educate more Americans on the game, which is fantastic. That's what cricket's about. It's about helping and teaching others, and yeah, fantastic. Now that's the talking about yourself bit done, Joey, and let's get into this cricket discussion. I've chosen some topics to talk about and discuss, and I thought for the first topic, Joey, we talk about the history of USA cricket, especially between the 1700s and the 1900s in particular, because you can learn a lot about cricket from its history, and the history of cricket in the USA is quite interesting. And over the years, cricket in America have a long history with each other. Many people have done what they can to introduce cricket into the States over the years. I think everyone knows that in 1844, the US and Canada played the first ever international match of cricket. And this was obviously before the first ever test match, which was played in 1877 between Australia and England in Melbourne at the MCG. And that first game between the US and Canada was before that. Just shows you how long USA has been involved in the game. And obviously, a lot of people may know or may not know this. In 1932, Don Bradman, the great Sir Donald Bradman, and an Australian team toured the US and Canada. They played some games all around US and Canada, promoting the game and all that, and people wanted to see Don Bradman. And obviously, Bradman and Babe Ruth met each other. I think they met each other at Yankee Stadium for a game of baseball they watched. And there's a photo of them together, two icons of their sport. Obviously, Babe Ruth, very high in baseball regards. And obviously, Sir Donald Bradman, one of the greatest ever batsmen to ever play the game of cricket, and he was. And also, you have the Philadelphian cricket team, which is probably the most well-known US cricket team ever. Played some first-class matches against many countries and other cricketing teams around the world, and played against Australia a few times, mind you, and they had a few wins against them. And they played first-class cricket between 1879 to 1913. So it was a long span there of games for them until cricket dropped off and they went their other ways. But Joey, you've done some videos on New World Cricket about the history of the USA, really involvement in cricket from the 1700s to the 1900s. So tell us what you have discovered and learned, and give us a brief overview of what you've learned from reading into the history of the game in America.
Yeah, well, one of my taglines for my channel is, New World Cricket, America's first pastime. And cricket was really America's first pastime, and was one of the first organized sports in the country before, soccer became organized, before American football. There was cricket. It's really like the oldest organized sport there is. And so that was, George Washington during the Revolutionary War played a form of cricket. Like, I guess it's an Americanized form of cricket called wicket. I guess the bat was more like a spoon, and there was 3 innings, but more or less cricket, a version of cricket. And it was quite a popular game in the early United States. I mean, that's something that was played regularly. There's not too much documented on it. You mentioned in 1844, the first international match between the United States and Canada playing cricket, and drew a pretty good crowd. And again, some of the documented history could be better. But it was part of American culture. And there was a lot of cricket teams even as far, early back as like the early 1900s, there were a lot of cricket teams in America. And so I think one thing that led to the change from cricket to baseball was like the commercialization of baseball. And so a lot of teams, were lured into converting into baseball teams. And that's really unfortunate. And so that happened, like the 1900s. But you mentioned the Philadelphia cricket team. I'm going to be doing like a long series on Bart King, like the most famous American cricketer. So I still have a lot to learn, but I just been learning about him, his cricket stance, and he like puts his hand behind his back and like runs. It's so cool. And I wish we had more photos of him or like video. But he was famous, and and Philadelphia was a popular team internationally. And so it was hard for them to play American teams because they were so good. So they had to go, abroad or have teams come. And that was fairly regular occurrence of having teams from Australia or England come to the United States to play. And I think England's first international cricket tour was to the United States, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of those early tours were to the United States. It's really unfortunate how when they made at the time it was Imperial Cricket Conference, I think the ICC, how it was only open to teams that were part of the British Commonwealth. And so obviously didn't include us. I think for a time it didn't include South Africa too. But so it was that and the conversion to baseball that really like severed ties. But for a long time we had a really good history of cricket. And so so I'm researching Bart King, doing videos on him, just trying to make these connections between like cricket now, and we can trace our lineage back to the earliest history of our country. It's really cool. And so Bart King was so famous. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but Bart King was so famous that, he would go to London or he'd go to England and people would recognize him on the street. He was like a rock star there. And so we produced, homegrown cricket talents that were famous, internationally. And so it can happen again. And so, we're developing a new rivalry with Canada. I think certain colleges have had a continuous cricket program since the 1800s. The name is losing me right now, but I did a video like top 10 cricket facts about United States. And so there are some colleges that can trace their lineage back, very few, but we still have some connections to modern day cricket that trace lineage back to the early days of cricket. So it's really, really interesting to learn about, and just thinking, the first international game, the first English, tour, both have America involved. I think we owe it to the cricket world to be a bigger part of the international cricket stage, because I think we were integral in the early part of cricket. And so we need to bring that back and be important again. So I just think it's a matter of time before that happens again. But, we can share baseball and cricket. I think the biggest problem was, when we had these cricket teams converting to baseball, it was just like a financial decision. Like we're struggling, or, we want to make money, not to be rich, at the time it was just to survive. So I think we can maybe learn nowadays to live, together and appreciate both games. I know there's a YouTuber named John Boy. He does baseball videos, and occasionally he'll do a cricket video, which is really cool. And just like appreciate how these games are similar in many ways, and how they share similar histories. And just one more thing. There was this guy, Harry Wright. He played in the 1800s, late 1800s, for Cincinnati baseball team, and he won the championship. But he credited his victory on using cricket strategies that he learned playing cricket, and he converted to a baseball player. So I mean, there's so many things that we can learn from each other that I think we would be remiss if we didn't try that. So lots of opportunities there for sure.
Absolutely. It's just wonderful to hear the history of USA cricket from you there, just a little bit there. And I'm sure everyone would feel the same in terms of learning something new and different, and about how cricket in the US have a long history with each other. And it's wonderful that you're, doing some videos and educating people on the history, because to fully understand cricket, you must understand its history, and then you fully appreciate it for what it is. In any form of cricket, really. If you understand the history behind it, then you appreciate where the game's come from and how it started until now. So the game in America has definitely done that in terms of its long history, and it continues to grow and grow as cricket's now getting into the States and being developed, and more people are coming accustomed with it. So fantastic to hear what you had to say on the history there, and doing those videos on your channel, and no doubt people will be educated on the history of cricket in the USA, which is fantastic. And it's quite interesting, as I said before. It is quite interesting doing some research myself. It's quite interesting reading up about it. You learn something new about these different players that played, and what they did. And as you said, there's not much on them. There's no footage or photos or any information, because obviously the records back then are a bit everywhere, as they were back in the 1800s. It's the same with other forms of cricket as well. You don't have much footage from the early days, especially 1800s in that sort of period. So, but yeah, to learn more about these players and the history and how it all started is is fantastic. And hopefully people watching or listening to this episode would take some time to research and learn about, cricket in America, which is fantastic. And cricket's all about learning. You always learn something new every day in this game. So no doubt people will feel that as well, listening to this episode, listening to you, Joey, speak about the history of cricket in the USA there. Be a brief overview, which is fantastic.
Cool.
I thought for our next topic, Joey, we talk about associate cricket, because on your YouTube channel, and as you've mentioned earlier, that you've been covering associate cricket, you tend to focus more on associate cricket, being from the USA, of course, which is an associate country. And as you would know, Joey, and anyone listening on the podcast, we've started late last year a new series on associate cricket. And we've spoken to many people thus far, from, Bertus de Jong, a Dutch cricket journalist from the Netherlands, Andrew Nixon from Europe, about European cricket. He's a writer, journalist there. And we've spoken to Craig White from Mexico cricket, Brazil cricket. We've spoken to Matt Featherston, and the captain of the women's team, Roberta Moretti-Avery. Japan cricket, we've spoken to Alan Kerr, and the captain of the men's team of Japan, Kendall Kadawaki-Fleming. And we've spoken to one of your compatriots, Joey, Peter Della Penna, of course, ESPN cricket info journalist. And we have more interviews coming soon with other people from the associate world for all of you to enjoy. And the reason I started it, the associate cricket series, was mainly just to bring awareness to associate cricket, because many of us who come from the full member nations, Joey, we're used to the mainstream cricket.
Yeah.
We're used to, mainstream cricket. And some people don't really care much for associate cricket. Some do, but majority of cricket fans just focus on, their country and what they're doing and the mainstream cricket, so to speak. So I thought to bring awareness by doing this series to make people understand the stories of the people who work hard behind the scenes and the players from these countries. And I've learned a lot from the many interviews we've done on the series thus far. And, there are some very passionate people who want to promote and grow the game for all to enjoy in their country, but also around the associate world. And, there are 96 associate countries that are a part of the ICC. So there's more to full member cricket than the 12 full members. There's a whole heap of other countries there as well that make up the associate world, which is fantastic. But Joey, as with anything, you get presented with challenges, and associate cricket has a lot of challenges in terms of the two biggest ones is funding and growing the game and developing it. And many associate cricket boards around the world struggle with these two challenges. How do you, as a cricket board, introduce cricket into the community? How do you establish grassroots cricket, establishing local cricket clubs in communities, competitions, pathway systems, underage comps, etc., to build up to the national level and be competitive in the international stage? Having facilities, that's often the biggest problem. How do you have access to nets, grounds for people to access in their local areas, but also for the national team to play international cricket? They often play on artificial turfs. They either play on either turf wickets, but some countries don't have that luxury of turf wickets, which is often a rarity. And making cricket accessible for everyone, like on TV or in your local community, etc., getting it across on the internet, etc., getting it that exposure. So, and also getting cricket into schools as well in their sporting programs, so young kids can see cricket for the first time and say, "Oh, this is a good sport. I might as well take up this." And I didn't know that we played cricket in our country. So, all those questions that many cricket boards ask themselves. So Joey, the question I have for you is, from your short time involved in the game, what have been the noticeable differences you've noticed when it comes to full member countries compared to associate countries? And do you think as a cricket community, we should do more to help these associate countries out from your perspective?
Oh yeah. So much so. But I really enjoy watching associate nations cricket. I think a lot of good things are already in place. I've been watching the Asian Challenger Cup, and unfortunately Japan really got beat up by Saudi Arabia, and Cambodia won against Singapore. But I was able to watch the games in full, and I was able to watch Canada play against Nepal. They lost at the last second too, and that really hurt. Canada's, my other country, And one thing that I really like about associate nations cricket compared to, I always compare it to like rugby because that's my other love, is that it's more accessible to watch for free. Sometimes you would watch like rugby associate nation games or tier 2 they call it, and sometimes you get a really bad camera angle. It's not really watchable. Or someone's recording it from like their phone. So I think at least the games are really high quality and watchable. Number one. Number two, there's way more fans watching the game. You do have a lot of people, especially from Southern Asia, watching the games, like interested in it. It might not be like tier 1, but you do have a sizable fan base interested in the game, questioning the game, wanting to know more about it. And there's also more resources, albeit less. There's some really great YouTubers out there. Obviously, your podcast is my go-to. I've learned so much. Roberta Moretti, listening to her talk about cricket in Brazil is fascinating. About how they like sing songs like during when they're practicing or playing. Just listening to like implementing Brazilian culture into cricket is fascinating. Like I want to see that. I want to see that so bad. But I wouldn't know it existed if it weren't for your podcast. And so there's that. There's other channels, Daily Cricket. Even though they're in Hindi, I put the subtitles on, but they cover extensively everything. And so I think that there's a lot of passion for associate nation cricket. Whereas in other sports, it's kind of hard. It's like you have to piece together little things. Like you think it might be televised and it's not televised. And so there's a lot of good structures in place in associate nations. And, like I said, last summer, watching the Cricket World Cup qualifiers, I had a blast watching all those games. United States lost every game. Didn't matter. I had a blast watching it. So at least I could watch the United States play on the regular when they do have games. Lately we're not having warm-up games for the Cricket World Cup, but that's another thing. But a lot of good things are in place, and funding is missing. But one way there's a lot of ways you could probably get people into cricket. I work in a school, and so when students come to my office, they see, different types of balls. I have rugby balls, Australian rules, I have cricket balls. And so one thing that they like about these games is it immediately makes them unique and interesting, and so they like making comparisons, to American sports. So it's a great like compare and contrast. If you're doing a unit topic on that, you can compare and contrast these sports. But they like feeling special and unique. If you want to learn about cricket, you could also learn about Australia. You can also learn about India. And so you can make ties to geographic areas. So I would strongly recommend teachers, if you want to introduce cricket, it's also a great way to introduce, geography, different cultures, different ways of life, different ways of doing things. So it's not just a game. It's much more than that. So that's one thing. And there's a city in Brazil near Sao Paulo called Poços de Caldas. And I think it was their mayor, by a city initiative, just took these city funds and said, we're going to start a new sport. It's not going to be soccer. And through this community initiative, started, cricket in that area. And I think now it's grown so much to where there are 15 contracted female players that make money playing cricket through Brazil. And it's like the biggest, it's like an epicenter of or like a what do you say, oasis of cricket, in a country full of soccer. And so I think that's another way to do it, is just to, if you're from a country that likes other sports, you can create a small cricket community and like immediately be unique, immediately gain opportunities, where if it was just soccer, everyone plays soccer, so you're not going to get the same opportunities. So I think there's a lot of ways to do it. Just got to be creative, and funding is definitely missing from the game. So I wish that's something that, I don't know how to influence that or can control it. ICC needs to maybe do more. I see India helping Nepal by providing resources. And so that's great. And so hopefully other countries do that. And I think if United States develops Major League Cricket more, and through our domestic league, we can also create more opportunities, build a really good domestic league, and then trickle that down into national teams, trickle that down into Central America, South America, and see where that goes. So a lot of opportunities, and I really like watching Associate Nations cricket. And if I had to choose that between that or Tier 1, I would choose Associate Nations. It's a lot of good games, and it really keeps my attention. So it's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting to hear your thoughts there about associate cricket and what we can do to help and grow and develop it going further. We can always do more. Probably not doing enough as we should at the moment, but we can always do more and help out these countries who just want to play cricket and want to be a part of this great game. And there's a lot of challenges and barriers for them, but most of them are on the right track. And you hear some good stories, especially from the people I've interviewed, about what they're doing, and they're really passionate and they care about the game. They care about growing and developing it and changing people's lives in those countries as well. A lot of countries have problems financially, and families as well come from all different upbringings and backgrounds, and it changes people's lives and perspectives, and gives them a sense of hope and opportunity. Even if they may not play for the national team, but cricket gives them a start and gives them something to look forward to. And teaches them valuable life skills as well, which the game does. Perseverance and not giving up, and all those important life skills that you need to learn. Resilience as well. Mm-hmm. What would be your advice for someone who is not really keen on associate cricket or doesn't really know much about it, doesn't really pay attention to it, but they suddenly come across it? What advice would you give them about associate cricket, for those who may not be too sure about, investing their time or effort as a cricket fan into it?
Well, I would say, if you don't follow these teams now, 5-10 years in the future, you're going to be playing these teams. We've seen great growth, especially with teams like Nepal, Canada, United States, obviously are my favorites, but there's a good amount of Tier 2 nations that I say are really close to going the next step. You saw Afghanistan, that was previously an associate nations, do really well in the Cricket World Cup, win important games. So you have that. And so I think, cricket is a game where associate nations can reach up to that level. So if you watch certain teams in Tier 2, they will eventually get to that Tier 1 level. So you'll be playing them regardless. So you might as well start watching them now while you can, and just see how they play. I think it would be a very smart move.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good way to try and convince people into just being curious about associate cricket.
Yeah.
Because, there's some talented players out there and some teams that are doing some good stuff. You mentioned Afghanistan, but also the Netherlands in the World Cup last year won a couple of games. They won against South Africa and Bangladesh. So it's definitely on the rise, associate cricket, but we need to invest more money, time, and effort. And if you do that, you'll get some results, and you'll get teams that are, competitive, and like just all need that foundation to build on. That's the problem at the moment. They're lacking that foundation at the moment. So the ICC can do better. They can do more as a governing body, and they can do more to promote associate cricket, which is what they need to do, because every country wants to play cricket, wants to be a part of it, but we have to try and help them out a bit to make a start and get up and running. So hopefully we see that in the near future, and hopefully we see a lot more countries be successful at associate level, and hopefully move up the ranks and do well in major tournaments, etc., as we've seen from other associate countries in the past. So interesting to hear your thoughts on that, Joey, about associate cricket, which was good to know. And Joey, we've reached our last topic of this discussion. I've enjoyed it immensely. I hope you have as well, and I hope people listening has enjoyed this as well. I thought for our last topic, Joey, we talk about the T20 World Cup, which is in your neck of the woods in the Caribbean in 2024 this year. And we also talk about the Olympics in 2028, mainly about what they can do to help grow and develop cricket in America for its potential impact. So I thought that was a good topic to end on and talk about. We have the T20 World Cup, which is in June. It's not far away. It's only a few months away, so it comes around quickly. Different T20 World Cup this time around, different format, 20 teams. There's more teams, which is good. I think that was always the plan, to expand and grow it. And then, so you have that happening. There's going to be some games in New York, Florida, and Texas. Then you have some in the Caribbean, of course, at the well-known venues. But be interesting to see some games in New York, Florida, and in Texas, which have hosted some games before. Florida, obviously, at Lauderhill, has hosted some international matches before, and obviously Texas was a part of Major League Cricket as well. And the New York one's a pop-up stadium in Eisenhower Park, if I'm correct. Yes.
Yep.
So that would be interesting to see how that goes. I think India and Pakistan are playing at that venue, I think.
Yeah.
So that should be a big game. So you have the T20 World Cup, and you have the Olympics and cricket's inclusion in LA. Mainly, that's why the ICC wanted the cricket T20 World Cup to be co-hosted with the West Indies and the USA, mainly targeting the North American market. Mm-hmm. And they thought that was a strong area for growth. And two, for the ICC's ambition to have cricket in the Olympics, which was approved, and that's now in the Olympics for 2028. So that should be interesting to see how that tournament goes in 4 years' time. Mm-hmm. Obviously not in for Paris, which is this year, but in 4 years' time, cricket will be in. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. So, Joey, what sort of an impact you would think the T20 World Cup and the Olympics will have on promoting cricket in the USA from your perspective?
I think a big missed opportunity from the United States, first off, I got to say, is that we have no warm-up matches for this T20, World Cup cycle. And so I've seen some fundamental errors on our planning aspect of it. Why are we not having warm-up games? What's USA cricket thinking and doing this? Are we naive? Are we, that's a big head scratcher why that's not happening. I'm watching Canada and just feeling really jealous that I want to watch my guys play. I want to know who's on the team. I want to know how Ali Khan's going to be bowling. Want to see, Rusty Theron, if he's going to be part of the team. I want to know so bad. And so they're like keeping it from me, and it's kind of not funny right now because a lot of other teams are preparing a lot. Like Nepal has a ton of games. Uganda has like 2 series that they're preparing for, and it's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful to see new teams like Uganda in the T20 World Cup. Having 20 teams, I think, was a great idea that you can't really do in the 50 over version of the game. And it's a big opportunity because, if you look at the ticket prices, and they say they start at $6, in Guyana. But if you look at the ticket prices in New York specifically, and those are the games I'm going to be going to, They start at like $80 and go up from there. That's a lot of money for a ticket. You know, if they sell out Pakistan and India, I mean, those tickets they start at $150, $160 a ticket. So an immense amount of money. So I'm not a huge fan of like commercializing to that extent, but if that could help bring more opportunities, then so be it. If we could sell out those games, the issue with Eisenhower Park is that the park has a lot of construction yet to be completed. From what I understand, they just started breaking ground on Eisenhower Park. Peter de la Pena he took some pictures of the park, I think in early January, and nothing had been done. So I'm a little worried about the chance for embarrassment for the United States in that aspect. But I think overall, it could be a great opportunity. And the economic pull of the United States is like no other. And so I think that's a very smart move from the ICC. Right now, it does feel a little bit artificial, the fandom that we have in the United States. It might be large swaths of people from other countries coming in to watch the games.
Yep.
Or people that are more well-to-do, people who have better resources to watch these games. And that's okay, like this time, but eventually you want to see like more community, like grassroots, starting from the bottom and going up. More opportunities for, schools to like, go as a classroom. I see that in South Africa. I saw that in Zimbabwe in the qualification tournaments. That is like the dearest thing to my heart. Just seeing those young kids dancing, watching the game the whole time. So that's what I would like to see going forward. I don't think we're going to see that on this World Cup because of the way it's organized. I'm also, curious about the tickets because, how I grew up, you could buy tickets fairly easily, like, well in advance. And here they have like a lottery system. I still don't know if I have tickets yet. I'll know in a couple of days, but it's like, really? I was disappointed at how expensive the tickets were, although it is New York, but
yep.
This is going to be a way bigger undertaking than I previously imagined. So be it. So I think there's a little stress there. But I think that it's a start. And even though it's starting this way, it's not how I would like it. Not at all. It's not how I grew up watching sports. Sports to me was more, like homegrown, more like community oriented. So I'd like to see that going forward, but I think it's a start and I'm happy to be part of it. And so the next time it comes around, it'll be different. And Major League Cricket will be different. And that goes to Major League Cricket. There's only 2 stadiums for Major League Cricket, the Washington Freedom. They don't play any games in Washington. So like, why do they have the Washington name in it, So I think that's a big step going forward is having unique grounds for every city, have like real, grassroots organizations in each of the cities where they're located, and then getting the youth to play and developing minor league cricket more. And so, you talked about T20 World Cup. I'm very excited about it, and I'll be covering it on my channel. I'm excited about Major League Cricket, but kind of in a way, I'm most excited about minor league cricket because that's the homegrown from the bottom league that I could watch on the regular. And I don't have to worry about high ticket prices. I don't have to worry about the things that I do have to worry with the T20 World Cup. So I can kind of give and take both. But yeah, like I said, it's a start. With the Olympics, a lot of people seem to be sure like it's going to be T20 format. And I don't know if that's like decided yet. It seems like it's going to be good, but inadequate in a lot of ways. And who knows, in 2028, it's like like so far in the future, like cricket will have developed so much. But as of now, there's no major league, San Francisco, I guess. Okay, you'd have San Francisco. But, what's the cricket landscape in Los Angeles going to look like at that time? So there's that question, but also like what format would work in a Olympic Games and how many teams could you have? I think something was mentioned like 6 teams only.
Yep.
That could be very dangerous with the United States there because it's going to be like what, India, England, Australia. Like who else could you have? Pakistan, South Africa and the United States. Like, oh God. So I don't know if T20 would work or if it would. Maybe it's really successful, but I'm like, I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I was almost thinking like a T10 format would be best because you could play way shorter games. Thinking rugby sevens, how that's like a 20-minute game, and that fits better in the Olympics. I hate to say that, and usually I don't like T10. I do like the European T10 league. That's about it.
Yeah.
That works really well, but it's like. So I think they really need to think it through for the Olympics to make that a successful tournament in the Olympics. And I think 6 teams is not nearly enough, but again, it's like you're limited. So I overall think it's great. And I think once all the big hoopla and all the fireworks settle, the lights turn off, we're going to still have just our grassroots and just our, core members of cricket. And that's going to grow because you're going to have new people be like, oh, that was kind of cool. What's cricket? And come to it and really love cricket for what it really is, because cricket at its heart is much more than the World Cup. It's much more than the Olympics. Cricket at its heart is, the individual teams, individual players playing. And so that's what I'm most interested in. And so I think it's, it'll swell up, and then when it cools down, we'll have a much bigger base to grow off of. So I think there's just opportunities all around us. So it's really exciting, and I'm just glad to be part of it so much. So.
Absolutely. Good to hear your thoughts on that. Has it been advertised as much, like with the T20 World Cup? Do people know it's on? Do you see it on billboards or posters or whatever?
Good question. 0. Nothing. If the internet didn't exist, I was telling my wife this the other day, if like the internet didn't exist, I wouldn't know about it.
Yeah.
That's one thing where to watch it on TV, like Major League Cricket was on a very small channel, CBS sports package, like just a very, very rare cable TV channel that nobody watches. So we watch it on Willow TV, Willow TV is like the online streaming platform. But a lot of things are moving to the internet, but if I didn't have the internet, that I would not have known about it because it's not advertised anywhere on print media. Don't see any billboards, don't run into it ever. The one time I saw cricket in the wild, as I say, is one of my daughter's assistant principals was wearing a Delhi Capitals hat. And so he was into cricket. And I was dropping off my daughter, and I was like, "Oh my God, you like Delhi Capitals? That's great, IPL." And so that was the one time. And then he was so excited. I was so excited. I forgot what I was doing. Like, I'm gonna drop my daughter off at the school. But so there's definitely people out there, but we're few and far between. I think the internet's pulling us together, and hopefully this grows a bigger community so you can see that in the wild more often. But right now it's like nothing.
Yeah, and I have heard that from some people who said it's basically non-existent in terms of advertising, especially from Peter De La Penna. He told me that when I spoke to him about the Olympics and about the T20 World Cup. He said basically nothing. No one knows it's in the Olympics. They know flag football's in the Olympics for 2028. That's been advertised to the hilt.
Yeah,
but cricket hasn't.
Yep.
And same with the T20 World Cup, nothing at all. So a missed opportunity there for the organizers of both the Olympics and for the T20 World Cup, especially to get it across in America. Isn't that the whole reason why we have these tournaments in for a reason for the T20 World Cup and the Olympics? You want to get it across.
Yeah.
And they're not doing anything about it. So that's a shame, but maybe that will change as we get closer to the T20 World Cup. maybe more advertising. And as we get closer to the Olympics, which is a fair way off, it's only 4 years away, then we'll see more and more stuff being advertised. But probably missed the ball there.
Yes.
On that front. But do you think it will make a significant difference to people supporting cricket in these two events, or do you think it will just be the status quo?
I could see it being just the status quo, but it might make a difference. Maybe it'll make a little difference, and that little difference will help make a bigger difference. It makes a difference with me, and I think that's important. I'm interested to see what new fans are at the stadium. I'm sure there's going to be some, but the inaccessibility of the tickets kind of worries me, because if you're pricing it that high, you're only going to get people who are flying in or who live in the area that are very well-to-do that are going to watch that game, go through the hassle. Because for someone like me, it's like, okay, you got to find a way to get to New York, stay in New York, find a way to get to the stadium, pay, really high ticket prices. If I want to go to multiple games, I got to stay the night. And New York's it's a very expensive city. So, it's a big thing for me, where for someone else with much more means, it's probably much easier. So I think it'll be something, but I think going forward, hopefully there's more events, like we learned from this event, and there's more events that are more, accessible to all types of fans of cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was good to hear your perspective on that, about the T20 World Cup and the Olympics, because when I spoke to Peter Della Penna, he had a different perspective. And when I spoke to Nate Hayes about it from Emerging Cricket, he had a different perspective on it as well. I suppose people have different ways of looking at it, whether it will make an impact or not. But good to hear your thoughts on that, and good to hear what you feel about these events taking place in the States and what will it do for cricket. So thanks for that, Joey. It was great to hear your thoughts on that. Yeah. Well, Joey, we've reached the end of our cricket discussion. It's been an enjoyable chat. We've learnt loads about you and your cricketing journey. I'm sure everyone listening and watching will share the same sentiments. But thank you for joining me for this cricket discussion to discuss New World Cricket, your YouTube channel, USA Cricket, and your cricketing journey with us. Joey, if people want to get in touch with you to follow New World Cricket on social media or any other platform, where can they do that?
Yeah, if you go to YouTube at New World Cricket, just like that. I think I'm on Twitter too, New World Cricket. If you look that up, at New World Cricket, I think that's where I am. I'm still learning Instagram, but again, the same one. I don't know how to use Instagram very well, but you could write me a message there or on our Facebook page. Again, it's the same, New World Cricket, same logo. So reach out to me, write me. I love getting texts or mails from people, and I respond to every one of them. So interested to get your opinions on things. If you have a suggestion or a comment or something you really liked or something you didn't like, I'm interested in it all. And so love to hear from you guys. And Jack, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This was great. And it's you've had so many great guests on your show, and just to be part of this is really special for me. So I'm just so appreciative to be part of this. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the kind words there, Joey. My pleasure. And we will leave links to those in the description of the episode for people to check you out there. But thank you for those kind words, Joey. We just wanted to hear your story and your journey in cricket, which is a fascinating one. And we just want to help each other out in the cricketing community. That's what we do. So thank you for those kind words, and my pleasure. It's great to have you on and to talk about cricket, and especially learn something about US cricket as well, which is fantastic. Before we go, remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. So the podcast is available on Anchor, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. Once again, thank you Joey, for joining me today to discuss New World Cricket, USA cricket, and your cricketing journey. I hope all of you watching or listening to this cricket discussion learnt a lot about New World Cricket from Joey and on USA cricket and his cricketing journey. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.